Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the AGM here at Kents Hill Park Conference Centre. I'm going to hand you over to Liz Thackeray, Chair of the Trust, who will set off for today.
Thank you. Welcome to everybody, particularly those who are joining us online, as well as everybody who's in the room here today. I want to give a particular welcome and thank you to Milton Keynes u3a, who have been helping us today with guiding people in the right direction and making sure we all end up in the same place. And Leslie, I think you perhaps want to just...
Yes, I just want to welcome you all to Milton Keynes. It is a labyrinth if you don't know it. We love it, but we understand the routes and roads, the grids, and there is a problem if you are trying to get north, not on the motorway, because there's a road closure. So it's the A509 north from junction 14. There are diversions in place, so hopefully nobody's trying to do that, because it's closed for at least a year, if not 18 months. It's causing great problems. But welcome everybody. Welcome to Milton Keynes.
Thank you, Leslie. And if you could convey our thanks to your team who are outside. While we're making ourselves comfortable in the room, and before we move into the official business of today, we are going to see a film reminding us of the Off the Wall initiative last year, or rather earlier this year, on Hadrian's Wall. The collaboration was a u3a-led event celebrating learning. The success of this event has led us to plan the u3a festival, which will take place next year. Next year. Here is a short film which demonstrates what u3as do so well together when they join forces to deliver a great experience. And after the film, you're going to hear from Margaret Fiddis, who is one of the leads on the festival for 2024. Alan Walmsley, our Vice Chair, had planned to speak today, but he is convalescing following surgery and has sent his apologies, but his very good wishes for today to everybody. So if we could roll the film.
This is a u3a UK-wide event, and the whole idea is to raise awareness of the u3a and to bring u3as together as a family. And it's a good idea to have networks, so individual u3as know that they're part of a bigger organisation. People have come from all over the UK, from Scotland, from the south of England, and from Wales and Northern Ireland. So the whole event is for curious minds and creative minds. So we've got some speakers, and they are very well known in their field.
That is victory in war. That is pushing the boundaries of the empire further back.
We've got charcoal drawing, we have got music, we have got creative writing, we've got photography, and we've got people out walking and people cycling. So big variety of things, huge variety of things.
Well, really, it's a celebration of all the learning opportunities that the u3a offers to its members. So it's a kind of mini festival of learning, if you like. I volunteered today to run a circle dancing session. It's a dance form that not many people know about, and it's a very therapeutic and gentle form of exercise. So hopefully some more people will get to know about it today.
We're going for a ride around out past Vindelander and back. I've cycled all my life. I'm National Cycling Advisor, also involved with the Cycling Network, and I'm also a ride leader in my own u3a. So I use all those skills to basically help people into cycling.
When we arrived this morning, everybody was friendly immediately, and I've met several lovely people today and had lots of chats. People were actively asking questions about what it's like where you live, what your u3a is like. We've been sharing lots of information like that. So for that in itself, it was well worth me coming, and I've also learned lots about Hadrian's Wall, which is only on my doorstep, really.
5 members from the Northumbria Regional Creative Writers have come to lead workshops. We've just finished one session and it's been really, really entertaining.
I went past 5 minutes ago and I'm thinking we're in a time warp.
And it's just great that people are coming together and having a good time.
Detention centre.
Volunteers are, I think, instrumental in bringing groups together and just getting people to enjoy things that they might not necessarily have thought about doing. And if you look at the group today, they've all learned from one another. They've all looked at one another's work and said, oh, wow, how did you do that? It's a cooperative movement. It's something where we all have to take an active part. U3A is a means of continuing to learn, continuing to live, continuing to enjoy life. Every day you learn something new and you meet new people, and it's just a wonderful way of stretching out your social network and meeting like minds, people who enjoy doing the same things as you.
I think you may find that in the audience today there's 1 or 2 faces that you may recognise from that film. Margaret, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to show a few slides. Here we go. There we are. I'm delighted to be able to have the opportunity to have 5 minutes this morning to speak to you about the festival. As many of you will already know, this member-wide event is taking place next summer in July between the 18th and the 20th. It's the first ever national u3a festival, and as trustee for the Yorkshire and Humber region, it gives me great pleasure that the Trust has chosen York for our region, and we look forward very much to welcoming members to York from across the 4 nations. The idea for a festival came following focus groups which we held, asking whether members would like the Trust to hold a conference, as we had in the past, or whether they'd like to try something new. And the response was very definitely try something new, and so the idea was born. So what is the big idea? Well, it seemed clear that people wanted to be able to get together and share their activities in the same way as they do every day, and to share the joy of u3a membership. In doing so, we wanted to make it possible to allow as many people to come as wanted to, and so costs are important, as is the location and the venue's accessibility. And with that in mind, the work of organising a festival is well underway. We've been spreading the word for a few months now in every way that we can, which has resulted in some great responses. Members, group leaders and subject advisors have come forward with all manner of offers, and as a result we have over 70 suggestions at the last count, and I know that there will be more. So let's just have a quick look at what's on offer. Just take a look at the variety of things that we have here, and there really is something for everybody. The festival email inbox is bursting with ideas and suggestions, so I'm really looking forward to the festival. With such a choice, it should give us all a chance to try something new, to share our passions with other members and learn from one another's as we do every day in our u3as. So why York? Well, it's really accessible by train and by road, and also the university offers us absolutely everything that we could possibly need in the way of accommodation, flexible spaces for workshops and talks, a great sports centre, cafes and restaurants, and all the support we could need to put on this major event. Most importantly, what will it cost members? We've really tried to keep costs down. So you can see here what we have in the way of prices. The festival B&B rooms, single ensuite rooms, I would say, are £54 per night. Then the festival rates for day 1, including dinner, that is the only dinner we're including, you'll have to buy the rest yourself, is £25. For day 2, it's £10, which is a full day, and day 3 is a half day for £5. And if you buy the lot, you get it for £35. So finally, just finally, this is where you can find out more information. We'd like you to come, we hope you will, and we very much look forward to welcoming you all to York next summer.
Thank you, Margaret. I hope many of us will meet each other in York next year. Sam will now tell us how today's AGM will run.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome to all of you online as well as the people here in the room. I'm Sam Morgan, the Chief Executive and Company Secretary of the Third Age Trust, and I will be taking you through a few important pieces of information before Liz chairs the business of the day. Today, u3as are joining us remotely from all over the United Kingdom to hear the debate and to vote on the business of the day. And we're very pleased we also have some members here with us in the room in Milton Keynes. We feel it's really important that the Third Age Trust includes us all, and that means every u3a member, every u3a committee member, every volunteer for the Trust, every staff member and the Board of Trustees, because we all work together to contribute to keep the u3a movement and the u3a community strong and vibrant, and we want it to be strong and vibrant and ready for the future. We've taken steps to make this meeting as accessible as possible to as many members, and I'm pleased to extend a warm welcome to all of you, whether you're here in the room or online, to today. I just want to take a few moments to explain the voting procedure that we will use today. For those of you that are the registered person to vote at the AGM, your votes will appear to the right of the video under the Vote tab. So when a vote begins, it will automatically switch to this tab. Alternatively, you can click on the Vote tab and wait for the votes to appear. Once a vote begins, you will see the resolution being voted on, and you simply select your voting direction from the options shown on the screen. The option you have clicked will highlight and other options will become greyed out. If you need to change your voting direction due to error, please click again on the option you wish to select. For those of you in the room and those of you attending remotely, please remember to ensure the device you are using to access the AGM is fully charged and you have accessed the u3a AGM site. At various points during the meeting, voting delegates joining remotely will be able to submit questions or comments depending on the item. To ask a question of the chair, please use the panel to the right of the video. Click on the Questions tab and type your question in the field below, and when ready, click Submit. The chair of that section of the meeting will read or summarise the points and either answer the questions if they're relevant or pass them over to the relevant presenter. For those of you in the room, please can you raise your hand and the chair will indicate when she's able to take your question. If we actually run out of time for all the questions that are asked, we will make sure that we keep all of the questions and send out answers to them all in the mailing that will follow the AGM. According to our attendance report, we have a quorum of 40% of u3as, with 490 u3as taking part. So I have pleasure in declaring the meeting open. I will now take you through the remaining voting statistics. As I've said, 490 u3as have indicated they wish to participate, and that's equal to u3as holding 1,068 votes. In terms of proxy statistics, there are 137 u3as proxying to the company secretary, of which 29 u3as have given specific instructions to the company secretaries as to how they want that vote to be placed, and one u3a proxied their vote to another u3a. I will now hand over to Liz Thackeray to take us through to the agenda.
Right, so hello everybody again, and welcome to our AGM, whether you're online or in the room. Without further delay, I will move to item 1 on the agenda, the approval of the minutes from last year's AGM. And I want u3a to propose and u3a to second this resolution. If you are proposing or seconding online, please propose by writing the name of u3a's voting representative and the name of your u3a in the chat box. And if you're seconding, likewise, write the name of your 3A and the u3a's voting representative in the chat box. Thank you. I'll just wait for a moment to see if we have any online proposers or seconders before asking in the room. We don't appear to have anybody at the moment filling in the form, which hopefully is not an indicator of problems. So could I ask for a proposer within the room to accept the minutes of the last year's meeting as correct? Thank you. And if you could shout out your name and u3a.
Yeah. Ian Fennell, Fetcham, u3a.
Thank you, Ian. And we have a seconder who is Phil Hawthorne from Winchcombe area, u3a. So we now need to vote to accept this. For those of you that are the registered person to vote for from your AGM, votes will appear on the right of the video screen under the Vote tab. When the vote begins, it will automatically switch to this tab. Or alternatively, you can click on the Vote tab and wait for the vote to appear. Once the vote has begun, you will see the resolution being voted on and simply select your voting direction from the options shown on the screen. The option you have clicked will highlight and other options will become greyed out. If you need to change your voting direction due to error, please click again on the option you wish to select. I will now open the poll for you to cast your votes on item 1 on the agenda, and the slide reminds you how to cast your votes. I will keep this open for a few minutes to give you time to get used to the voting system. And I think the voting is also done in the room using the system, isn't it?
Yes.
So those of you who are voting delegates within the room should also be following those directions. So I'll give a few minutes for delegates to vote, and then we'll inform you of the result. Problems with the system, if you could just raise your hand, because there are staff members who can give a hand if necessary. There seem to be a couple of folk who are struggling a little. If you keep your hand raised if you've got a problem, and then you should get somebody coming to you.
Are we ready? Yeah. Is your microphone on? Is mine on? Yeah.
Am I on? Yeah. We will close the vote now. I'm aware that not everybody has managed to get into the system yet, but we'll try and make sure that there is support for the next votes after this one. But I'm pleased to declare that Resolution 1 has passed. There were 553 votes cast, 6 against and 48 abstentions, making total votes cast 607. Right, I'm now going to move over to the lectern for the presentation of my report. This year, my report will have a different flavour, as it will consist mainly of 3 short videos, each focusing on a topic central to our thinking over the past 18 months. Last year, we focused on our 40th anniversary, and we thanked Michaela Moody and others for all their hard work in making it such a success. We introduced Fit for the Future in a plenary session. This year, the focus of my report is on 3 areas of activity central to becoming fit for the future. They are digital strategy, our strategy for growth, and the Trust's role in ensuring both good governance and supporting the u3a movement. The first of the videos you're going to see is a discussion between me and Tony Smith from Ashby de la Souche u3a, and it's an edited version of a much longer conversation. So if we could see the video, please.
One of the concerns to u3a members is the Trust's digital strategy, and I've invited Tony Smith to join me to talk about what's happening with the digital strategy. Let's just go back to 2020, and there was a project to develop a Beacon 2 system that was outsourced. There were problems with the providers. At the end of the day, that basically ended, but contrary to what I sometimes hear people saying, we were able to recoup all the money that had been spent on that project, so there was no financial loss to the Trust. More or less immediately following that, there was a review taken of the Trust's digital strategies, looking at things very much in the round and recognising that it wasn't a case simply of looking at a single project and saying, how do we update this project, but a need to look at the whole of our digital ways of working and to think about what do we need to be doing in order to ensure that we're fit for purpose going into the future.
So is that what we mean then by the digital strategy? I mean, where is it at the moment? Where are we at with it? And particularly what will concern the members, I think, is what will the cost of it all be?
Following that review, there was a digital strategy working group set up under the auspices of Tattle, our trading company. It was Tattle that took this responsibility on for 2 reasons. One is that Beacon is part of the Tattle portfolio. And secondly, because at the time, there was not available on either the Trust board or in the Trust staffing the appropriate personnel. The digital strategy review completed its work at the back end of last year and reported in various ways up until about the middle of this year. It looked at 6 different strands of activity: finance and group management systems for local u3as, future strategic use of social media, looking at the development of a learning hub, digital development of the Trust's organisation and skills, the potential development of digital services to local U3As, the digital aspects of the Trust's direct relationship with individual U3A members. That process of looking at those was concluded in the middle of this year, and that broad round overview is the background to the digital strategy. Now, we did have a Chief Development Information Officer in post who is no longer, has moved on to do other things, and we're in the process of trying to recruit to that post at the moment.
Yes, so this is going to be a professional person, presumably, with
yes,
considerable expertise.
Yes, I think one of the things we're very clear about is that we need to ensure that we do use professional expertise. Timescale is very dependent, really, on having the right staff volunteers in place and making sure that we get things right as we do them. But hopefully, the more we are using people who actually know and understand the systems we're using, the less likely it is that we trip up. Now, where Site Works is at the moment is that I understand it's about to start live testing with a number of U3As, and then it will be rolled out. The original thinking was that it could well be a 3 to 5 year programme before everybody was transferred to Site Works. With a fair wind, it could be quicker than that. And obviously there's going to be a lot of training involved.
But we're looking at something between now and 5 years, probably.
Yes, and I think we've got to be thinking very practically with all these things, that everything is incremental, and one's got to say, what is it that's the most important and urgent thing that enables, and what are the things that are not so urgent?
So how are we going to ensure that members really get value for money? I suppose that's what the main concern of, I would guess, most ordinary members is.
But I think the way in which we control it is firstly by making sure that we've got clear plans for each thing that is happening, and that we are clear about what it is likely to cost. But at the same time, we have to recognise that there's some costs that we can't control. But it's also about not paying for things that we don't need to pay for. So it's keeping an eye on what's happening and understanding the business. And this, again, is where the professionals or the professional expertise comes in. Because if we've got managers, both on our financial side and on our IT side, who understand the business, then we have some control over what is happening.
But I suppose what you're really saying is that there are reassurances in place to be given to the membership because of the expertise and the professionals that will be really in control of the process.
Yes, and there are things like we do now have in place and have done for, I think, about 18 months now, a member of staff who is responsible for managing our contracts and making sure that appropriate due diligence is done.
Yes. Am I right in thinking there is a forum, or was a forum at some point in the past maybe, for membership, the members having a sort of say in what might go on?
We have recently set up a new Facebook forum called Fit for the Future, which is giving people an opportunity to share experiences.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
And thank you, Tony.
The original film lasted about 25 minutes, and you will have noticed that at times I appeared to be answering questions that hadn't been answered. On the original, there was much more conversation and much less of it being as one-sided as it appears on this shorter version. You may have noticed that I referred to there being some financial things that might be beyond our control. And what I was recognising there is that there are times when there are external factors such as inflation and other similar factors which we cannot claim to have control of. But what I do want to do is give the assurance that we are costing, we are planning, we're not just doing things and hoping for the best. Since the recording of that video, Tattle, our trading company, has made the decision, ratified by the u3a board, that once Siteworks is bedded down, work will be undertaken to look at integrating it with the Beacon system. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those volunteers that have been involved in giving of their time and sharing their expertise in the development and support of both these projects. And I know that they're both, well, that Beacon is very valued by many u3as, that Site Builder has been valued for many years, and it is my hope that Siteworks will be similarly valued once it becomes available to everybody. And I can see I'm saying the right thing there because I've got Alison, who's the main member of staff who is involved with supporting the volunteers on those projects, nodding widely. Yeah, thank you, Alison. So the next video that we're going to look at focuses on developments in our strategy. The strategies have been being developed over the past 2 years since the initial presentation in the 2021 AGM plenary session. Alan Wormsley, our Vice Chair, and Sam Mauger, our CEO, addressed a number of questions when they met recently.
As a CEO, you have a clear responsibility to the Third Age Trust Board for the delivery of strategic aims. So if I start right at the very, very beginning, why do we need a strategy?
Well, the Third Age Trust is a large charity. It has a turnover approaching £3 million, and the Charity Commission expects large charities like us to have a strategic plan. And at the same time, we have a responsibility to the members. They expect that those leading the movement have a good idea about what we're doing and how we're going to get there. And during the 2-year slowdown in the pandemic, it gave the board some time to think about what they were doing well and what wasn't going so well, and decide how we could best position the movement to move forward in quite a different post-pandemic world. And so from me to you, Alan, as lead trustee for strategy, you were involved in lots of the early consultations with the members. So how easy or difficult was it to come up with the main strategic aims?
Well, I have to admit it was very, very difficult. Towards the end of 2021, we carried out lots of consultation groups in each region and with different groupings of u3a members. And as you would expect, there were lots and lots of different views. We had some people saying that there should be a much more academic focus to learning, but equally we had lots of other people saying there should be much less academic focus and much more focus on sociability and enjoying the learning in an enjoyable setting. So it was quite difficult pulling those differences together. But what we did in the end, we pulled together what we thought were the main areas of interest for the people that we'd been listening to. So we came up with 4 groups. The first one is all about maximising the benefits to existing members, but at the same time trying to find ways of attracting new but younger members. And we call this one Next Generation, Next Gen. The second area is all about advancing the learning opportunities in an enjoyable and sociable setting, and we call this one Enjoy. The third area was all about emerging from the pandemic and trying to find ways of improving the profile of the movement. And we call this one Emerge and Collaborate. And the fourth area is all about promoting a u3a collective identity within the movement, so that all members can recognise and benefit from the wider opportunities that are available within the movement. We call this one Single u3a.
We referred to each of these areas as cornerstones, and we call them cornerstones because we felt they weren't solutions in themselves, but really they're foundations. And the aim is to get u3as and members and volunteers and staff to all pool their ideas, so when the proposals are developed, they can reflect exactly what u3as want in each area. So, as you said, Alan, the first one was Next Generation or Next Gen. And we know at the moment that for most u3as, the age profile of the membership is increasing steadily. And that's because most u3as recruit people they know or their friends to join the u3a. And what we wanted to do was to encourage the attractiveness of the movement to people of all ages, to encourage the next generation of members to step forward and join, whilst at the same time maximising the benefit of being part of the u3a to all our existing members. Then moving on to learning, there's been enormous development in recent years in online learning, and we now have some major commercial competitors. But there's also evidence that people learn best when they enjoy what they're learning. And that really is at the heart of the u3a and what it does. Most traditionally in the u3a, learning's taken place at local u3as and it's been face-to-face. And I think we all applaud and agree and want to encourage that to continue, and I'm sure it will do in the foreseeable future. But a lot of regional and network and national activities have an increasing role to play, particularly online. And we have interest groups online, for example, which is really successful. The third cornerstone is all about how the movement can improve its profile nationally, regionally and locally, collaborating with other like-minded organisations and helping us to emerge from that pandemic period stronger and with a really wide and appealing public profile that can be well suited to this new world we find ourselves in. And finally, single u3a is really about encouraging all u3a members to think about when they join a local u3a, they're not just a member of that local u3a, but also they're a member of this really wide, vibrant movement. You yourself, Alan, are a u3a member. Can you, and you travel around the movement, visiting u3as and talking about strategy. How have u3as and u3a members reacted up till now?
The majority of people seem to appreciate that we have, well, I say we, the movement has a clear direction. And that's what strategy is all about. It's that direction. And they seem to also agree that we have hit on the main subjects that are of interest to them. It's quite clear that recruitment is a top priority for most of them. And most of them do recognise that as that age profile increases, they do need to bring in younger recruits in order to balance the age profile. So why don't you take us through what work is going on at the moment, what the sort of timescales are, and what will u3a see at the end of each piece of work?
Thanks, Alan. Well, the Third Age Trust is divided up into 3 departments, and each department is made up of staff and volunteers, and they each have the aims taken directly from the strategic plan that's built into their annual work plans, along with all the normal responsibilities they have and the normal services we deliver. So some of the examples include member services working on activities that relate to recruitment, as you've outlined, and the Policy and Communications Department are working on activities that promote collaboration with other organisations, whilst another small group is looking at developing ideas to promote that feeling of being a collective u3a movement. And then, of course, we have the Development, Learning and Communication Committees, who themselves are mainly made up of u3a members. And they've all been contributing ideas and providing feedback on the strategy. So we hope over the next couple of years, groups like these will produce lots of proposals that we can test and we can publicise and ask for u3a feedback. And then those that are appealing to u3as will get picked up by u3as and will be spread throughout the movement.
And how can u3as and u3a members contribute to the work that's being done?
We have a very small staff team, as you know, and so we're always looking for u3a members who've got time and energy and enthusiasm to be part of teams, working with staff members and other volunteers to develop ideas and proposals and test them out. So anybody who's interested can contact either me directly, or they can send in their ideas or their willingness to take part through a dedicated email at strategy@u3a.org.uk.
Okay.
So for me, the final question to you, Alan, is if everything goes to plan and all the proposals are adopted in each of the 4 cornerstones areas, what do you expect the movement will look like in, say, 5 years' time?
I think in a nutshell, I would hope that we'll have an even more vibrant u3a movement than we have at the moment. I hope that we'll have a much better, well understood collective identity. And I hope that we'll have more sustainable membership levels throughout the organisation. And those membership levels will be in well-managed U3As. I hope that we'll be attracting new entrants across a much wider age range than we do at the moment. And I hope that we'll be offering a much wider range of attractive learning opportunities. I think those learning opportunities will continue to be delivered primarily through operationally independent U3As, but I do believe that there will be a continuing increase in online learning opportunities as well. But I hope the movement as a whole will be more financially sustainable, and I hope that with multi-income sources at all levels in the movement. But I think the challenge for us is to try and encourage and support all U3As to achieve their potential. And also to encourage all members to learn in the most enjoyable way.
Sounds really good.
And that's it. Thanks very much indeed. I hope it's been interesting for everyone.
Thanks very much, Alan.
Right. And the final video that you're going to be seeing this morning was recorded in the u3a office following a recent u3a board meeting. John Bent, the former trustee for London and currently chair of the steering group exploring governance arrangements, and Margaret Fiddis, trustee for Yorkshire and the Humber, joined me in conversation about Fit for the Future. So, welcome to those who are seeing us today. Margaret, John and I have got together to talk a bit about Fit for the Future and where we hope to be taking the u3a over the next few years. And we are sitting in our palatial office suite in Blackfriars. John, how come you got involved in all this Fit for the Future?
Overall, I feel that the time was right for a revision of the governance of the Third Age Trust to make it, as our title says, fit for the future.
Mm. But Margaret, couldn't we just tinker around the edges a bit and...
If only that were true. I think it's time for a radical rethink, to be honest. I think the Trust has grown a lot over recent years, and the things that we need it to do have changed. And so I think it's important that we are reflecting that by providing, in effect, two different means of governance. The board, which will be a slightly different one ultimately, and some kind of representative council or body, which gives u3as a better voice and a clearer way to get its feelings heard. And I hope and believe that that's the way that we're going to go with this project.
I've heard some u3a members saying, well, in theory it sounds okay, but aren't we going to lose our voice if we haven't got a trustee on the board?
I don't know what you think, John. I think.
Well, the channels will be there. The board, which we're in the early stages of discussing, will be a board which will have the appropriate skills that are required to run an organisation of our size. £3 million turnover, 400,000 members, all stakeholders. We really need to be a well-run charity. This will enable the regional trustees to engage more with the u3as in their region and their nation, and become more of the voice that will bring the issues to the board for us to respond.
Yes, and I hope that by doing it differently, we'll provide an easier forum for them to actually say what they need to say, and that because we will be able to operate slightly differently, we may be able to encourage a wider group of people to be elected to that body ultimately and bring their voices more readily than they can at the moment. Some people don't really want the whole responsibility of being a trustee and a director of the Third Age Trust. They're more interested in representing their members and their u3as. And I think that's what this is going to help happen ultimately.
Now, when we talk about the board, at the moment, the board's made up of representatives, one from each of the regions and nations.
Yeah.
What we've been talking about is potentially a smaller board but people who've got relevant experience to ensure that we stay legal. Do you see that as being problematic in terms of representation, John?
No, because the conduits will be there. The channels would be there for the regional and national representatives to bring the communications from the members, from the member U3As to the board, and it will be more focused on the strategy, on the running of the business. The board will be. And we will hopefully recruit or we'll have volunteers come forward with the requisite skills that the Charities Commission defines should be on the board, and the Companies House. Don't forget that Third Age Trust is actually a company.
10 years into the future, what do you think the u3a would look like if we didn't make the changes that we are exploring?
Well, I think one of the things that we would have a great deal of difficulty in doing is continuing to recruit regional trustees. I think that will make a difference. And I also believe that volunteers will be more inclined to want to work on behalf of their U3As, and other people with those specialist skills would be able to put those into place and hopefully do their job more quickly and efficiently than the current board is able to.
At the moment, we are suffering from the roles being too diverse, too overbearing for people to come forward. They're all working very hard in their U3As, and they're quite happy to develop their U3As, but they don't see the need for the organisation to be a truly national and possibly even international body in the future. And yet the offer, as perceived by the trio of gentlemen who set up the u3a, is just as relevant today as it always has been.
Thank you very much for that conversation, and I hope that whoever is listening and watching this film will feel that they've got some more sense of what we're talking about when we're talking about our Fit for the Future agenda, and also will have more idea of what the u3a office actually looks like rather than what they may think it looks like. Thank you.
You may have noticed walking around in the background of that film one or two people who are here today wearing blue t-shirts. The Pilot Council, which is referred to in that video, has now met 3 times. And I want to stress that it is not part of our formal structure, but it's providing us with an opportunity to explore ways of meeting, and in particular, it provides an opportunity to ensure that member concerns are discussed and addressed appropriately. It's a work in progress. Nothing is finished at the moment. The videos are snapshots of some of the current priorities of the u3a board, and all are work in progress. We will continue to use a range of communication channels to inform members of progress and to engage in discussion, and your input is welcomed as we seek to move forward, whether it's by emails to one or other of the trustees, or whether it's to emails to the staff email address, or whether it's using the Fit for the Future Facebook page, or whichever medium you choose. The world of 2023 is somewhat different from that of 1982. Our responsibility is to ensure that as a movement we are fit for the future and able to face the challenges of the coming decades, just as our predecessors have done. We're now going to move on to agenda items 3 and 4, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Derek Harwood, the Treasurer of the Third Age Trust, who will deliver his report on the last financial year. Derek.
Thanks, Liz. Yes, this is the boring numbers section, I'm afraid. So I will be selecting a few key points from the published annual accounts, and specifically lifting some figures from the consolidated income and expenditure account. And this shows the overall position of the group, which is the Third Age Trust and the Third Age Trust Trading Company. The trading company manages, on behalf of the trust, the Third Age Matters magazine, Beacon, our membership system, our merchandising range, and the Click and Save scheme. We'll be comparing also our performance to the previous year. Then, so that's all the figures I'll be quoting are from the, as I say, the published accounts, which are on the website. And then we'll move on to the consolidated balance sheet, lifting some numbers from there. Thirdly, we'll look a bit more in detail at our trading company and its performance, financial performance. And then we'll look at the 23-24 budget sheet, which is again published under the AGM website page. And we'll be looking at the budget as approved by the board for this year's functions. And then I'll move on to the cash assets compared to our reserves policy. And lastly, looking at our longer term forecasts. So that's the areas I'll be taking you through now. So firstly on that list is the group's income and expenditure sheet. As I'm sure you're aware, our main source of income is our membership subscriptions. We are trying to broaden those channels. We did have a good donations level this year, so that was encouraging. And we've also benefited from corporate donations from Specsavers and Saga. Our membership growth was a bit slower from planned. I mean, we are increasing from the low over the pandemic period of 366,000, and we ended last year at 375,000. But we had hoped to get up to 400,000 last year, so our income was a bit lower because of not achieving that membership level. However, we were planning to come out of COVID, out of the pandemic period, at pace and with resumption of many of our activities and accelerated development. Our pace, frankly, our take-up level was a bit slower. I mean, sure you saw the same in your u3a's reluctance to get going again. So it did mean that from an expenditure point of view, our expenditure level was also a bit down compared to the plan for last year, particularly in the areas of level of staff, amounts of work done on development projects and on grants. And I'll come back to some of these points a bit later as well. You'll also recall at the last AGM, our great fear was high inflation. At the time, we were looking at potentially 10%, at least 10% inflation. So that was a worry at that time. Overall, the figures then for last year, our income was just under the 3 million, 2.975 income, expenditure 2.871 million. And therefore, we had a slight increase to our reserves of 104,000. Looking then next at our trends over the last few years, you can see just what I've really been talking about in terms of our cash assets, our reserves, the rate that we've been growing these, basically the orange line, the bottom line there, has slowed. Over the COVID period when we weren't doing a lot, our expenditures were lower, so our income, our reserves were growing. As I mentioned, coming out of the pandemic, starting up with more activities, we are spending more now, so the reserves have, the growth has slowed. And as I mentioned also, the income line has picked up that low there, that little dip there, 366,000, but now picking up again. And that growth level is promising. So overall last year, we actually planned to make a deficit in the year, expenditure to be higher than income. But we, as I mentioned, did slightly less work on the development projects. So we have overall had a slight increase again on our cash assets. So that's income and expenditure. Moving on to the balance sheet. No real issues on our balance sheet, much the same as last year, if you can remember the detailed figures from there. Our fixed assets are very low these days. We have some IT equipment for the staff and the trustees, so that we're all working on the same platform, but quite low levels of fixed assets. Also because we're using serviced offices now, we don't have premises in our own name or whatever, so low fixed assets. We only pay for what we use. Debitors, which are within the current asset figures, includes the TAM distribution receipts, advertising commissions, and advertising commission. These are lower than last year due to that lower circulation, lower membership level, and frankly also a bit of underperformance by our now previous advertising agency. But overall, the key is we don't really have any late payers. There's no real issues in there. Our creditors also a bit lower than last year as deferred income due to timing of transactions, and we received income in advance from some early annual return submissions. But overall, the key on the right there is, as I mentioned, slight growth in our net assets. Moving on then to Tattle, the Third Age Trust Trading Company. In the published accounts, note 21 specifically gives you detail about Tattle and their profit level, which the profit level, which was 31,000. Each of the 4 lines of business making a contribution to that overall profit. The Third Age Matters magazine, production costs are entirely covered by advertising revenues, and members only pay for the cost of distribution. Volumes, as I touched on, increased, but from the low figure before, so that's positive. Beacon licence fees, price held at £1, which covers VAT as well, set 3 years ago, but maintained again last year. Number of Beacon users continues to grow, with over 530 users now of Beacon. Merchandising, if you recall, we outsourced to Brand IQ back in September 2020, so they now provide the stock control, the shop. And they benefited last year by the addition of the trees line, which was part of our 40th anniversary. And the trees significantly increased our turnover and increased the profit in that section. But of course, that's now dropping off. And the fourth area, the Click and Save discount scheme, also made a slight profit contribution. Tattle, looking forward, are looking to improve on their merchandise sales, the breadth of the merchandising, increase our TAM advertising revenue, and develop that fourth line of business into the new Friends Extra scheme. And you'll be hearing a bit more about that later as well from Clive Grace, the chair of Tattle. The next section then looks at our reserves at the end of March 2023. So as you can see by the picture, the trends there, we continue to grow our cash assets, slowing a bit, as I mentioned earlier, but still growing. Within our cash assets, we have various funds. First of all, there's the Barber Lewis fund, a restricted fund, which is there to assist U3A's startups, new U3A's, and relaunches coming out of COVID. And in fact, we've had 7 new U3As since the last AGM that have benefited from grants for startups. So that fund has been used, as I say, and now stands at 9,000 remaining. Then we have what we call designated funds. I think it was in 2020 when we first talked about a development plan that we set aside specific funds for development and to support our development projects. And again, as I mentioned, coming out of COVID, we got going again on development and work on these development projects. So there has been expenditure incurred in those areas against that fund. It was less, our actual expenditure on the development project was less than budgeted figures, but we have used the funds, and the remaining figure now is 283,000 left for development into this year and beyond. But the majority really is in our unrestricted general funds, and at the year end, our funds stand at unrestricted general funds stand at 1.869 million, and that includes the minimum, the 1.1 reserves required by the Charity Commission for winding up if we should ever need to be in that situation of winding up the trust and to pay for our liabilities. So in other words, we're basically in rude health. And as I mentioned lastly, although we expected by budget to have a slight reduction, we have made a slight increase. So we now stand at 2.161 million in reserves, cash assets. The next picture is just saying the same again, but in a pie chart form, is just to show those proportions. So as I say, the big pie slice there is in our unrestricted available funds. That's reserves. Moving on to budget. So this is basically lifted from the sheet, as I said, that's on the website of this year's budget. So consolidated accounts were for last year. Budget now is for this year. Income, and if you are sitting there looking at the detail, there's more of a breakdown on the published figures. Some of the slices were getting a bit small from a pie chart point of view, so some of the figures presented here are consolidated slices from the detailed breakdown on the published budget sheet. Income-wise, as again I said earlier, heavily dependent on the membership subscriptions. We are now for this year holding for a target of achieving or even beating the target of 400,000 membership level, which would then generate an income of 1.6 million. Minor levels of income we've allowed for again, including the Riviera Travel Commission, bank interest, and from the successful interest groups online. So overall, putting those together, that gives us a slice of pie slice of 122,000. We're assuming, I mentioned, we had a good year last year for donations and legacies. So again, this year we're hoping to get some more donations, and we've put a figure, an assumption of 30,000 there for donations. The income from our trading company will benefit from that increasing membership, growing up from the 377 to 400,000. So that will improve their trading levels. So overall, we have a figure assumed of 1.422 thousand compared to last year. Again, you probably know that we increased the cost of the magazine from £3.35 to £3.60, but still seen as good value from our membership. The breakdown in terms of total against, if you're interested, we have a pie slice there of 1.221 million for the magazine and merchandising sales, and then an income from Beacon of 201,000. So as I say, from a group point of view, a consolidated income then of 3.174 million. Moving on then to expenditure. So obviously some of the costs here are paid for by those income figures. Sorry, turned the page too quick. Yeah, so I mentioned earlier development projects. So still a key target for ourselves is to continue the good work on the development projects. As I mentioned, we didn't achieve the extent of progress we wanted last year. So therefore, in terms of budget terms, we put a slightly lower figure than we had last year. So the budget's assigned for this year 91,000 for development work on the development projects. The large slice there for Tattle is 1.041 million, but as I mentioned, a lot of the Tattle cost is offset. For example, TAM is offset by what you saw in the previous pie on income. So I am just showing the figures in terms of income and expenditure, not the delta difference. I think yeah. And what else? The grants budget, again, we've cut that a bit. We had low take-up, unfortunately, from U3As last year of the grants budget that we set. So we've recognised that and lowered the grants budget. It's still significant, and hopefully the U3As, your U3As will take up the grants and use them for workshops, etc. So the grants budget and the regional expenses this year, budget set at 62,000. The office support, the staff costs are set at 1.297, and that's actually slightly lower than last year, which was 1.3. And again, that's really because we didn't spend what we'd hoped to do last year. I'll give you a bit more breakdown of that in a second. So that's the office support slice there. Other minor elements grouped together: cost of meetings, insurances, licenses, committees, beacon. All of that adds up to the slice there, the pie slice of 460,000, giving an overall expenditure figure of 3.32 million compared to last year 3.477, slightly lower. Just breaking down a bit of that office support number there. Largely the staff costs there. We had, if you remember the figures from last year, we had hoped, and the budget figures were set last year, to grow from 17 full-time equivalents in that small Blackfriars room to 24 full-time equivalents. But we didn't achieve that, frankly, due to difficulties in recruiting. It's still a tight market out there for the sorts of skills we need. The budget basis was assuming all the new starts would be from day one of the new year. It took us time to do that recruitment and bring more people on board, so we weren't incurring the costs as allowed for within the budget. And also, frankly, we did a reassessment after the feedback from last year's AGM on our general expenditures, including our staff areas. So as I say, last year we grew in staff and in office support, but not to the target last year. This year's figures, we're hoping to grow from the figure that we achieved, which is 20 full-time equivalents, this year to end at 22.6 full-time equivalents. Again, the next slide gives you a bit more further breakdown on that, which is basically the services that the office provides. As I think Sam touched on earlier, broken into the three organisational areas that are supporting your U3As. Yeah, that's on the website as well, as is the next one as well, which is maybe a bit more meaningful. This breaks down the costs of where your £4 goes. So basically it's showing the big range of services, office services that are there to support you. And as you can pick up there, the biggest one there, 74p out of your £4 goes to basically the helpline. And it always staggers me anyway that as an average per week, there is about 260 inquiries coming through. That's about 160 phone inquiries and about 100 by email. But you can see the wide range of other support services that are provided. So that's budget for this year. Looking ahead then, last section, moving on to look at our forecast and where we're going to be in the next few years. So we are still facing times of uncertainty. Membership numbers are recovering, as I've touched on, but will they continue to grow? How quickly? I know we'll touch on it when we come to one of the next resolutions as well, but that's the key. We want our membership to grow. What should we set our targets at? Will we achieve those targets? Will membership plateau? Will it drop? They're all uncertainties. We have to make assumptions in our long-term financial forecasting. High rates of inflation. I mean, the 10% is gone, but we're still looking at, I think even yesterday they were still saying 6.7% for steady. It's not dropping. So, and I think the Bank of England is saying 5 years of high inflation, but it's still, what do we put in the forecast? What do we allow for? Difficult to judge. I touched on development projects. We know we need to move with the times. Liz has touched on our digital strategy. There's a number of development projects we need to press on. How quickly, some of them are technically difficult. How quickly will we make progress? How quickly will we spend that money? It's again an assumption that we have to make over the next 5 years. And are there any other areas that we haven't thought of today that might be necessary to modernise and move with the times for u3a? So there's many possible scenarios, and with John and the board, we've done a number of scenarios looking at combinations of these assumptions. But you can see the basic trends on that picture there. So we are expecting our expenditure. I mean, even last year we thought expenditure would be higher than income. It didn't happen, but we are expecting, if we can make progress in all these areas, that expenditure will be slightly higher in income. And that does mean then that we will start to eat into our reserves, our high level of reserves, so the blue line will start to drop. And the key that I touched on earlier is that minimum level, the Charity Commission liabilities requirement set at 1.1. You can see where the trend is going. Our forecast is that we're not looking at, and this is probably the key for most of you, we're not looking at a need for a membership subscription increase in the next year or two, but potentially 2 years' time, we'll have to be considering that again. But rest assured, the board is looking at all these assumptions every quarter, not just annually, but every quarter we're updating our figures and looking how things are going. So obviously, hopefully I'll see you again at next year AGM and give you an update on that. And that's it for me. Thanks. Back to Liz.
Thank you, Derek. We'd now like to use the Ask function on the app so that you can submit any questions or comments you may have on the accounts or on my report. If you'd like to submit a comment question, type your message within the text box at the bottom of the messaging screen and then click the send button to the right of the text box to submit. Those in the room, if I understand that you've either been given or you're about to be given some cards that if you want to ask a question, it would be helpful if you could write on that your name, your u3a on the post-it with an indication of the question. This will help us in identifying the order in which we look at questions. For the question and answer period itself, we will endeavour to read aloud and answer questions or comments that have been submitted, but due to time constraints, we may not be able to address every question during the meeting. In the event that there are questions outstanding, we will ensure that there is a mailing with relevant questions and answers as soon after this meeting as possible. So we'll now allow 5 minutes for the submission of questions either through the IT system from those of you attending online, or for those in the room, if you want to indicate if you'd like one of these bright orange cards, and we'll make sure you've got one so that you can write on it your name, which u3a, and an indicator of what the question concerns. So a 5-minute break now for that. Call ourselves back to order.
Okay, so how we're going to do this is I'm going to read out the questions that we've got on that have been submitted by all of you attending remotely, and Liz will advise who's going to answer those questions. We have got more questions that, and some of them cover a similar topic. So any that are not read out will be included in a mailing and will go back to you with a full answer. So if you don't hear your question being read out, you will get it back in a mailing with an answer. But several of the questions are either yes or no questions, or actually they are covering the same theme. So to move on, the first question that we have from Richard Bedford at Stroud u3a is, having reserves of 2.1 million looks very healthy, but what plans do we have to make use of them to benefit u3as and members?
And Derek will address that question.
There's a few things to think about within the question. I mean, the first thing to me, of course, is even if we just carried on doing the same things that we've been doing now, because of inflation, we will be spending more. So our reserves will be reduced just by doing the same. So that's the first thing. That's hence, if you remember, one of the trends was showing that downward trend. But we do want to do specifics, and hopefully you have heard some of them in terms of, and they broadly, I suppose, fall within the digital strategy and the development projects. And there's another question coming up. Not sure if I'll answer it twice, but as we do work, I mean, the digital strategy, again, if you caught, I think it was four bullet points within that, showed that it's not just about the U3 office. Some people think the digital strategy is just for the staff team or whatever in the U3 office. It's not. There's many areas, how we do the mailing system, how we use Zendesk to ticket some of these multiple questions that are coming up, improvement in those areas. So there are a number of specific areas for our development for networks for the individual U3As. So that's why by predicting, carrying on largely what we're doing, seeing higher costs and inflation, but carrying on that development spend, then our reserves will start to dip.
Okay, so the next question we have is from Adrienne Nix from Welland Hatfield. And she's saying, will you be distributing the presentations and the videos? So that's an easy one, and the answer is yes. And there were several of those questions, so the answer to that one is yes. Harriet, do you want to?
In fact, I think that the videos are already on the YouTube channel, or will be very shortly.
Do you want to do the question in the room? Yeah.
So this is Ian Funnell from
Fetcham u3a. I noticed the annual report when I was trying to print it at home apparently had 2 pages on one A4 side. And while I can read it, it's very small and not easy to read. So I suggest in future that our annual report be produced with one side of reading on a sheet of A4.
We will speak to our comms team and to the people who do the design for the report and try and make sure that it's available in more than one printable format.
You've got another. You're going to ask a second question.
Yes, I noticed in the minutes for last year's AGM, the Charity Commission were requesting that we retained a certain amount of money, which was actually written as #13N. And I've no idea how that sort of typo arose. What is the fact value? I think Neil said it's 1.1 million.
Yeah, so you're correct. Last year, the figure set for we have a reserves policy on the website again, so there's more information on the reserves policy on the website. Basically, I think your words there was, what does the Charity Commission require? Charity Commission guidelines give you a form of calculation for your minimum reserves. which is based on your liabilities, the number of contracts, the timing for winding up those contracts if we have to wind up the trust completely. When we did the calculation last year, based on where we were with the last advertising contract, for example, the calculation, the arithmetic added up to 1.3 million. So that's what it was trying to say. Maybe we should have spelt out million. So last year it was 1.3 million. Right. So last year it was 1.3 million. But you saw my figures in the orange line there. We've redone the calculations for this year based on our current contracts, our current liabilities, and we are now saying it's the minimum requirement is 1.1 million. So that should be in the figures with the right dot in the right place there for this year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the next question we have is, have you considered moving your headquarters to another area of the country to save on office costs and to make staff recruitment easier?
And this is a question which arises, I think, every year. The reality is that when you actually do the sums, it's highly unlikely that there would be any real saving in costs. And it's also highly likely that recruitment would be more difficult because of the specialist skills that we are looking for in our staff. This is a problem that's faced by just about every national charity in the country, where the finding is that it is very, very difficult to look at being something other than London-centric in terms of a headquarters office. Though ours isn't a headquarters as such, it's when you've got the main office of any of the major charities, the reality is that most people who are looking for the kind of jobs that we are offering are based within commuting distance of London. And if we were to move to another big city or to a more rural area, the chances are that A, we would have the problem that most of the staff we've got at the moment would be lost, together with all the skills that they have developed over the years, together with making it very difficult to recruit new staff. And there are obviously costs involved in redundancies, etc., if you're moving and people are not able to move with you. So it sounds nice, but it's impractical in practice.
Can I just add to that, actually? So there was we did do an exercise to look at the costs of relocation in terms of making a number of people, with a percentage of people being made redundant, and a percentage of people who would be happy to move because they would be comfortable doing that. That was just based on a set of assumptions. We did that a few years ago to look at. Because this question comes up all the time, to look at the reality of whether a move outside was going to save considerable money, considering there would be quite significant disruption. And when we did that exercise at the time, it was seen that it wouldn't save us very much at all, but would cause significant disruption in terms of the services offered to u3as because of that move. So whilst there are charities in lots of different places, for sure, the disruption to us moving from one location to another at the time, and the cost of doing that was considered to be too high. So, but it is a question that comes up on a regular basis. So, okay. Somebody then said, will the AGM be available to view online after the meeting? And yes, it will. The AGMs are always available to view online, and it will go out as soon as it can following the meeting, once all the captioning has been checked, so people who need to use the captioning are able to actually participate in it.
Including the videos.
Including the videos, absolutely, including the videos. Okay, next question. Very good, thoughtful and clear financial report, thank you. Do you think we need to get better at understanding the key characteristics of our members? If we aim to recruit younger members or more men, at present it's difficult to measure this. Do we need to start to collect more basic information at recruitment stage?
It would almost certainly be helpful if we did gain more information. But as you know, it is local u3as that have got access to the information about who their members are and are involved in the recruitment and making those new members aware of what the u3a is about. We don't hold that information as a trust. And what we would be saying is, if you feel it would be useful to have this information, then it is really down to the u3as to be collecting it, not down to the trust, because we don't have the means. But it would be useful to get some better impressions of who is joining us. For instance, I was talking to one of the trustees a couple of days ago who was saying that they'd attended a new members meeting, and they'd noted that most people were not the, and I hate using age figures because age is, as everybody tells me, just a number, but rather than it being those at the, if you like, the younger end of what we would hope to be recruiting, they were people who were probably at a more advanced stage in their, I can't express it properly. They were older, yes. Thank you for the permission to say that. They appeared to be more in their 80s than in their 60s. And really, we need to find ways in which we're making ourselves attractive to that younger generation. And we also need to recognise that we have no lower age limit. And this is something I've been saying in a number of places recently, because there is that myth that you've got to be 50 or 55 or whatever before you can join the u3a. That is not the case. It's if you have the time to become a u3a member, then we are open, but we are still primarily there for older people.
We have a 27-year-old now?
We do have a 27-year-old treasurer in one u3a, and I have heard of another 27-year-old. I'm not sure which is the older of the two because I didn't actually ask for their birthdays.
Okay, thank you. Harriet, do you want to do the next in-person question?
Good morning. My name's Nick David. I'm from York u3a. I suspect Derek will answer this one because it's about his presentation. My understanding was that our designated funds were built up during the COVID period as we couldn't spend the money on the projects that they were intended for. Now that we're out of COVID, one assumes that money is beginning to be spent on those projects. So once those projects are completed and the designated funds have been exhausted, shouldn't we be seeing overall expenditure come down?
You're right on the first part in terms of our reserves built up. Generally, our reserves built up. The amount that we designated was ring-fenced at the beginning, so that amount was fixed actually from pre-pandemic, really. But you're right in terms of that particular ring-fence. The designated funds are now being spent. I think we were down to, I can't remember the figure, 286,000 left now. So if you project that forward, we've got probably about 2 years' worth of spend within that ring fence on ongoing development projects. But it is a figure that's just set by the board and the finance committee. So if in 2 years' time we think, well, we've still got more development projects to do, we can ring fence further reserves out of the unrestricted reserves and make them part of the development and ongoing development as well. So that's choices in terms of within the restricted funds. Overall, in terms of, yes, if we carry on and we're still seeing high inflation, then our spend level is going to be higher and our reserves will come down. And then we've got a choice in a year or 2 years' time to say, well, stop that. We can't afford more development projects, or we need to stop publicity or whatever. Or potentially, if we want to carry on doing what we're doing in terms of expenditure levels, then we need to be thinking about potentially more income, i.e. an increase of subscription levels. To answer the question.
Thank you, Derek. That's it, is it, Harriet, here? Right, so we're going to move on to the next question, and that is, when you say there's no need to increase membership fees for the next few years, does this mean the capitation fee, or the membership fee as we now call it, will not increase from the current £4 per member? And that's from Hilary from Salisbury and District.
And Derek?
Yeah, it follows on nicely from the last question. So we're not allowed to call it capitation fee, but so that's why I'm talking about subscription fee, i.e. the £4 per member. So that's the figure when I say will be under review. Currently, no expectation in the near term to move from that £4. So in terms of your budgeting for next year, it's £4 subscription stroke capitation fee.
That's great. And then what are the top 3 hardest challenges that the u3a movement faces in the next few years?
Right. I'm actually going to return to the 3 topics that were covered in the videos that I showed, because they're relevant as much to the movement as a whole and to each individual u3a and to the Third Age Trust. The first one is around strategy, and it's around being relevant to our potential membership. We've just had a question about membership and numbers, and we've got to be relevant. And we've got to recognise that what people may have been looking for 20 or 40 years ago is not necessarily the same today. It doesn't mean that the philosophy changes, but the way we work, because people have lived a different life over the last 40 years than those of the potential members 40 years had. So it's being relevant. The second is the whole challenge of digital. And we all know that we have got members that are very digitally aware, are using more technology than some of us would have room for in our homes. And we've got others that are saying, no way am I going near that technology. I want everything on paper, etc. And we've got to find a way of actually ensuring that we do not exclude by moving forward, but at the same time we've got to recognise what are appropriate changes to make and what possibly are less appropriate. And this is a challenge not just for us as u3a, but it's a challenge for society generally, with the change to digital in so many of the services that we need, from our health services to our banking services to just about everything else that's going on, where we're being told, you know, use the app. And the third one is in relation to our recruitment. And it's not just the recruitment of members, but it's also the recruitment of members who are able and willing to be the volunteer activists who will take our movement forward, so that they are taking on the roles that need to be taken up in our u3as, because the constant cry from u3as is we can't get anybody to sit on our committee, we can't get anybody to do this, that or the other. And what we need to be doing is making sure that people know what they are joining when they join the u3a. And at the same time, in both the advice that we give to u3as and in what we want to do and hopefully will be pushing forward with over the coming year, is making sure that at the national level we're also creating volunteer roles which are doable, rather than ones that turn into full-time employment before you know where you are, but without getting paid for it.
Okay, so I think they are a good flavour of all the questions that have come through. As I said, no question will remain unanswered. We have more questions on here, many of them covering some of the same themes that we've already spoken through. We will put it out, as we always do, in a mailing afterwards with all the people that have asked the questions and the answers, so you can all see the answers and come back on any more information you need. So over to you.
And I'm now going to hand over again to Derek, who will bring forward Resolution 2 concerning the appointment of auditors.
Thanks, Liz. So Resolution 2 is for the hopeful approval of appointing Goodman Jones as our auditors for next year. You may recall that we changed from Hayes McIntyre to Goodman Jones for this year. So we want to continue with a good service for Goodman Jones as our auditors. We want to continue with them for another year. And actually, the Goodman Jones price was slightly lower than Hayes McIntyre, so what's not to like? So we're asking for your approval to allow the board to set the remuneration and award the contract to Goodman Jones, please. Oh yes, sorry, read the next bit. Please may I have a u3a to propose this resolution and a u3a to second this resolution. Type propose or second within the text box at the bottom of the messaging screen and then click on the send button to the right of the text box to submit. Thank you.
Perhaps while we're waiting to see if we've got anybody online willing to propose or second, we could look for a proposer in the room. I don't know if there's anybody in the room prepared to propose the resolution that Derek has just read out to you, that we appoint Goodman Jones, etc.
I'll propose it. Tony Jewett, Preston District, u3a.
Thank you, Tony.
Can you tell me your u3a again, Tony? I know I should know it.
Sorry?
I know I should know your u3a, but can you tell me?
Preston and District.
Preston and District, thank you.
Yes, and I have a seconder from online who is Marion McCrindle from Watford Park, u3a. Do you want to take up the voting or should I?
Yeah. So thanks. So we have the voting instructions as indicated on the screen. If you can now vote, please. See them. Four. It's closed now.
Yeah. Right, I think we can close it because we've got a majority. We've got your majority.
So
It will come up on here.
Right. Well, that's the voting closed, I believe, so we should see the summary in a minute. There you go. So that's carried. 4 votes, 608, against 0, abstentions 11, overall casting 619 votes. Thanks. It's carried.
Just to say that with the votes, once we've reached a figure where we know that there is a majority in favour, then we are closing the count, because otherwise we'd be sitting here all day watching numbers flashing in front of us, just in case anybody, particularly those online, are wondering why the figures might be lower than they would anticipate. So we're now going to move on to agenda item 5, which is to announce the appointment of the 6 trustees that have been elected to serve as ordinary directors. These elections have taken place by online ballot within each of the regions concerned. 2 of the elections were contested and 4 were uncontested. What I will ask is, given that I think everybody who has been elected is present, if when their name is announced, they would just stand so that they can be caught on the camera for those online, and those in the room will know who the newly elected members are. So, firstly, the trustee for East of England, where there was an election, and the results of that election were that Alan Caddy got 3 votes, Maurice Austin got 38 votes, and Michael Kay got 17 votes, and Maurice Austin was duly elected. And we thank all the candidates for putting themselves forward for election. Right, the trustee for Northern Ireland. The trustee for Northern Ireland was uncontested. Valerie Cobain is therefore duly appointed, and we thank Valerie for putting herself forward. the trustee for the North East. The trustee for the North East was uncontested. Jean Cubbin was duly appointed, and we thank Jean for putting herself forward. Trustee for the North West. The trustee for the North West was uncontested. Tony Cheetham was duly appointed, and we thank Tony for putting himself forward. The trustee for the South East was uncontested. Susie Berry was duly appointed, and we thank Susie for putting herself forward. The trustee for the South West was uncontested, and Susan Parker was duly appointed, and we thank Susan for putting herself forward. There was an election in Yorkshire and the Humber. Margaret Fiddis received 57 votes and Nick David 18 votes. Margaret Fiddis was duly elected, and we thank all the candidates for putting themselves forward. So a welcome to all the new trustees who have joined the board, and we thank you that you're willing to give your time and your energy to support the work of the u3a movement. We also want to congratulate those u3as celebrating significant anniversaries. We will be recognising these anniversaries mainly through a newsletter that will go out to all u3as, a special mailing. But I would like to take this opportunity to make special mention of those u3as that are celebrating their 40th anniversary, and also those that have have been born since the last AGM. So those u3as which have celebrated 40 years, and this is 40 years since they registered as u3as with the Trust. There may be others that are 40 years old, but their registration was later. And the 40-year-old u3as are Barnstaple, London, Nottingham and District, Oxford, Wakefield and Yeovil. And I'm sure we congratulate all those u3as on that achievement of 40 years and still being active. There are a number of u3as that have come into existence since the last AGM, and they are Banchory and Deeside, Botley and Hedge End, Upper Eden, Frinton, Walton and District, Ipple Pen and Surrounds, the Isle of Bute and Glasgow Southside. And we welcome those u3as into the u3a movement, and we hope that in 40 years' time there will be that opportunity to celebrate that they have reached their 40th anniversaries. We are now going to hear two ordinary resolutions put forward by u3as in membership to the Trust. You will hear shortly, which you will hear shortly. As normal in all our AGMs, only voting members may participate in the votes on these resolutions. For a resolution to succeed, it needs to be passed by more than 50% of the votes cast. This is, of course, an ordinary resolution under the Companies Act has to be passed by a simple majority of those members who cast their vote. You will be offered the opportunity to vote for a resolution, against a resolution, or to abstain. An abstention will not be counted in the pool of votes cast. This is because an abstention represents a decision not to cast a vote rather than a vote one way or another. We will announce the results of all votes, including abstentions, and this is important as the quorum is 10% of the members. Please note that a person attending and entitled to vote will count towards the quorum under paragraph 14(2) of the articles, even if they decide in practice they do not wish to cast a vote and choose to abstain. Proposers and seconders of the amendments are permitted to speak for 5 minutes, proposer, and 3 minutes, seconder, by Rule 8.3 of the bylaws for the general meetings. Those proposers choosing to speak will do so by pre-prepared videos. So the ordinary resolution 3 reads, now that the u3a has in excess of 1,000 u3as, with the South East region representing around 20% of the national figure, we request that the organisational review of the Third Age Trust is mandated to consider a mechanism to give greater status and input to smaller networks and clusters, and this is proposed by Hastings and Rother u3a and seconded by Hailsham and District u3a. We will now hear a video from the proposer, Richard Collison, immediate past chair of Hastings and Rother u3a, who will speak on behalf of both Hastings and Rother and Hailsham and District.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Collison. I was the proposer for this resolution, along with one of my colleagues, Trevor, from Hailsham u3a. In a few words, I hope to outline our reasoning behind the resolution. Although the resolution gives the South East as an example, it is our intention that what we are proposing has implications, all of us in our great family, in 1,000 u3as across our nation. The needs of the South East are not the same as the densely populated areas of London and Manchester, for instance, or indeed the remote islands such as Jersey, Guernsey, and the Isle of Skye. All our needs will be different and will reflect the wonderful diversity of our great movement. We deliberately use the word mandate in our resolution so as not to place a straitjacket on the board. No doubt, many of you are working in localized networks, clusters, groups, or whatever name you use. These will be working brilliantly already to support the diverse needs of your membership. These local groupings are to be nurtured, developed, and encouraged. The resolution is asking the board to investigate giving such groupings some recognized status, thereby having an input for the future of u3as right across our nations. The board is going through a period of restructuring, and this is the time for us to have an input. What the outcome will be dependent upon us, the members. Please support the resolution in the open-minded manner in which we have attempted to craft it. Thank you all very much. Goodbye.
You will now be able to vote on Ordinary Resolution 3. The magic number for the 50% of votes.
It has to be 50% of u3as.
Right.
very much. Yeah, we're going to get the results. I don't know if this is...
The results will be shown in just a moment. I hope. Yes. So the results of that vote are shown on the screen at the moment of 443 against 440, 31 abstentions, total votes cast 614. I'm able to advise you that the resolution proposed by Hastings and Rother and seconded by Hailsham and District has not been carried. And then we're now proceeding to ordinary resolution number 4. This annual general meeting calls on the Third Age Trust to 1. Adopt as a key strategic priority an increase in national u3a membership to at least 500,000 by the end of 2028. 2. To implement regular and substantial national promotional activities that enable this goal to be achieved. 3. To report on the implementation and impact of promotional activities at board meetings and in annual reports. This is proposed by Royston u3a and seconded by Tring u3a. We will now hear a video from the proposer, Jackie Gellert.
Thank you. I'm Jackie Gellert, Chair of Royston u3a, which is proposing Resolution 4 for this year's AGM. The thinking behind the resolution is really quite simple. We know that u3as greatly enhance the lives of their members. It follows that it would be good for more people to become u3a members. And the resolution calls for a concerted effort to make that happen. If you agree with us, you should vote for the resolution. At the moment, less than 1 in 30 people who could be u3a members actually are. There are well over 10 million people who no longer work full-time who could benefit from being u3a members, but don't. We know that u3as provide a wide range of learning and leisure opportunities, that they do this flexibly in response to what members are interested in, that they do it in accessible locations and online. They do it at very low cost. So why on earth are those 10 million plus people not already members? For many of them, we believe the only plausible explanation is that they simply don't know what they're missing. So it's up to us to do a much better job of telling them. At present, most of the work to recruit new members is done locally by individual u3as, often aided by advice and promotional materials from the Trust. This work is important and should continue. However, it needs to be supported by a much greater national marketing effort by the Trust to increase awareness of u3as and what they do. In summary, we're calling on the Trust to undertake much more meaningful and much more effective national marketing that will complement what local u3as do and that will contribute to a large and sustained increase in membership. If you support that idea, vote for Resolution 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. We will now hear a video from the seconder, Rob Jones.
Okay, good afternoon, u3as. My name's Rob Jones. I'm Chair of Tring u3a, and it's my pleasure to actually support and second resolution. Now, the reason for me being here is that there's been a few people that have raised one or two issues and concerns about the resolution. So my job this afternoon is to try to respond to a few of those. I've picked out four of the main ones, which I hope will answer the majority of the questions that have come in. So without more ado, let's get going. So the first one is that the marketing that we're proposing that the trust do will actually replace or undermine the great work that we, the National U3As, already do. Now, this is a bit of a misunderstanding, a misnomer, because the purpose of the resolution, as I think Jackie has already explained, is that the work that the trust will be doing will actually complement the great work that we already do, and it should actually help us bring in more members, which is what we all want, of course. Okay, so I hope that's cleared that point. So our second point is that there's a claim that that we've got a target of 500,000 members that we're going for by 2028. So that's 5 years' time. Is actually unachievable. Well, if you think about it, the target is fairly modest. It only represents an increase of some 3 or 4% of the eligible people over 5 years. It could in fact be exceeded if appropriate action is taken by the trust. So I think the target isn't that unreasonable. Now, the next one, the third, is that the U3As are big enough already, and we shouldn't grow any larger. Well, I think we simply disagree with that, because the more people that actually belong to U3As, the more that we'll be getting more out of their retirement and living and laughing and learning along with the rest of us. So, and they won't be sitting on the sofa watching daytime TV. So, I think that the more people that join, the better. The fourth and the last item is that the idea of having a national marketing campaign would be too expensive. Now, I disagree with that, and also my own edict is that if I've got money to spend for my U3A, I like to think of it as coming out of my own pocket. So I'm very careful about how I spend it, and we think that there are many well-established social and other media that we could use for the Third Age Trust to actually promote more members at very little cost. We're certainly not advocating a national advertising campaign. That indeed would be extremely expensive. The second item on this point is that, of course, if we do actually bring in a lot more members, that's going to increase the income for the trust, and some of the additional marketing would actually pay for itself. And then the target of something like maybe 100,000 members at the current sort of membership rate would bring in something like £400,000, which would indeed add a great boost to the budget. So I hope that's answered some of the main queries that have come up. And I think in conclusion, I think the arguments for supporting this resolution are absolutely compelling. So please do give it some careful thought. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.
So thank you, Rob. And you will now be able to vote on Ordinary Resolution 4. Yes. So the results of Ordinary Resolution 4 will appear on the screen shortly. So we have voting for Resolution 4, 405 in favour, 187 against and 25 abstentions. Total votes cast 617. I'm able to advise you that the resolution proposed by Royston and seconded by Tring has been carried. I would like to thank everybody for attending the AGM, both those of you who have been attending online and those of you who have been with us in the room here. Thank you for your ideas, your patience, your good humour and your support, and also the kind support of the Milton Keynes volunteer team and our staff team who have helped us today. I would now like to move a vote of thanks to the retiring trustees, and again I would ask those that are present to stand when their name is mentioned. So we would like to thank the trustee for the North East, Sandy Rickaby, the trustee for North West, Neil Stevenson, and the trustee for the East of England, Barbara Cordina. We're also thanking those members of the board who have been co-opted during the last year. Michaela Moody, who can't be present with us today, John Bent, and Jeff Carter. And naturally, thanks also go to those trustees who are not either leaving us or joining us, but have been plodding along over the period. Thank you to everybody for all the contributions that they make, and not only those who are part of the trust, but all our trustees of the u3as throughout the UK who give of their time and their energy. And also to thank the trust volunteers and the staff team, those people in blue today. Go on, stand up and show yourselves off again. And that is a very real vote of thanks to them, not only for their support and dedication in what they've been doing today, but what they do throughout the year. And without them, we could not do half the things, or less than half the things that we do. The formal part of the AGM is now closed, but we will move on to a plenary session with a film with Clive Grace, the chair of the Third Age Trading Limited, and he will give an outline of Tattle in the following film.
Good afternoon. My name's Clive Grace. I'm the chair of the Trust Trading Company, and I'm just going to give you a brief presentation today on the role of Tattle, as we call it, and its contribution to the U3A movement. We've been going for about 4 years. We were created to satisfy charity law requirements, but in the event, Tattle has tried to prove itself useful to the Trust in other ways as well. We've taken on quite a lot of quasi-commercial activities for the Trust, and we've freed the Trust to focus on developing the movement and serving the needs of local U3As. We're partially independent, but we're fully accountable to the Trust, and we successfully make a small surplus every year, and we remit that to the Trust under gift aid. And our focus is to try and increase the value that we have to U3As and their individual members by being more efficient and more effective in our operations, and by adding new services to the repertoire. So here's our purpose and mission. We try and deliver the Trust's quasi-commercial activities in a separate legal entity. And this ensures transparency and avoids the risk that the Trust's charitable funds could be eroded by losses on the quasi-commercial activities. So we aim to add value, we emphasise value and quality. Originally, we were asked to look after TAM and Beacon, but that's since been expanded. It now has included the 40th anniversary wood, merchandise and branding, site works, and also member benefits and offers. As I mentioned, we're a wholly owned subsidiary. We've got a separate board of directors, all of whom are appointed by the Trust board on a year-to-year basis. Half of these are trustees and half are independent, and that means that they're not on the Trust board or employed by the Trust. We have an explicit accountability protocol in place to ensure that there's regular reporting to the Trust, and we only draw on the Trust staff to run our operations, manage our finances, and so on. And we meet the full cost of the staff that we use and also their management overheads. These are the four lines of business. TAM, which all or most of you anyway will get, about 190,000 copies of that 5 times a year. We're pretty pleased with how it operates in and of itself. We've got a new advertising agency that's doing very well, and we've let new contracts to make sure we've got very cost-effective packaging and so on. But there is a big issue with TAM in terms of at some stage soon moving it into the digital world, and that's a bit tricky, but we're working hard on that at the moment. In terms of Beacon itself is doing pretty well now. We invest fairly heavily in its development every year, but the big issue in that area of our work is the transition from Site Builder to SiteWorks. We're hoping to transition something like 700 u3a websites over to SiteWorks, which is a much more modern and flexible form of website, and also offers the prospect of a degree of integration with Beacon. Branding and merchandise. This hasn't been so successful commercially, but it's got a use value for u3as because of all the branding of banners and stuff like lanyards and so on, which are very important just to presenting u3as professionally and in against a sort of a common brand and a common set of ideas. And of course, we have some merchandise, and there's some offers on the merchandise site, and really would encourage you to have a look at those. We're hoping to develop a much more easily accessible shopfront, the kind that you're used to when you just go online to buy something. And we're negotiating that at the minute and hope we'll be able to launch that sometime in the new year, just to make it a lot easier and familiar to all of you to make use of. Members added value we're quite excited about. We originally had a scheme called Click and Save, but to be honest, it didn't work nearly as well as we'd hoped. But we've created a new arrangement with our provider. It's being launched as part of the new Friends initiative. And over the next month or so, you'll start to see all these offers coming through. So needless to say, we don't share your information with anybody. We just make the offer available through the e-newsletter, and you follow it up if you want to. So in terms of finance, Tattl's got an annual budget of about 1.4 million. 1.2 relates to TAM, some 500,000 on production and editorial, 700,000 on packaging and distribution. Beacon's got a rather different business model, subscription income per member of the u3as that take Beacon. That's about 200,000, and it's spent mainly on development and support and licenses. And SiteWorks, which is in implementation, will cost about 30,000 annually, plus some upfront development costs. Partly that'll be met by the trust, and partly, not till we get to 2025, a small charge for that service to individual U3As. Merchandise and branding are currently making a small loss, and that's being worked on. We hope to turn that around. And members added value will launch as part of Friends with this wide-ranging package of member benefits. And here's some information on that package. And our approach is about quality and value. And the arrangement we have means that you get national price promises, which means that they're the best in class that you can get by way of price. The best price provider promise, which means the best price that provider will give to anybody. And some things are completely free. And I'm just going to flick through a few of these to show you the range. So there's a whole load of sport, fitness and well-being offers, Vision Express, healthcare, various aspects of that, including 30% saving when you spend more than 50% on glasses and lenses. Significant beauty discount card. Totem, which is you have to pay for. It's £15 a year, but everything you buy, for example, in the co-op, you get 10% off just showing your card at the till. So very simple, and your whole of your weekly shop, if you shop at the co-op, can be 10% cheaper. So a really remarkable benefit, that one. Discounts on Apple and Dell computers, offers on dishwashers, washing machines, fridge freezers, and all of that from Hotpoint, Whirlpool, and Indesit. Offers on Motorfinity and Fiat. Home and life insurance, again with the national price promise that I referred to earlier. Multiple travel offers, again with the national price promise badge that you see there. Top attractions. These are the best prices that the providers give to anybody, and you can see the list of savings down there at the bottom. And then another thing which I think is particularly attractive, free financial and legal advice. Obviously, it's not unlimited, but it can get you going and give you that opportunity to get some free financial and legal advice without feeling that you're starting out incurring big bills. So lots and lots of offers in many different ways, and we hope these will really be of value to U3A members. So that's it. That's the presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, there's some of my colleagues at the AGM who will be happy to answer them. There are members of the Tattle board there, and you can always email me via the U3A office, and I'll be happy to share more information and explain things if that would be of any help. And we've also got board members who, if you would like, will be able to come to your U3A regular meetings and perhaps either make a presentation like this or even be there in person to explain some of the things we do and some of the benefits we hope our work will bring to you. So thanks a lot and have a great AGM. Bye-bye.
Thanks to Clive. And it just remains for me to say thank you to everyone who's participated in this meeting today, working with us towards an engaged and vibrant movement where U3As are foremost in every aspect of our work. For those who are not in the room, I hope you're going to have something nice to eat or drink now. And for those of you who are in the room, I wish you a pleasant and safe journey home once you've participated in the refreshments that are available in the room next door where you went for registration. And until next year in the AGM, auf Wiedersehen.